Okay, I've got sound and we're ready to go. And as I had mentioned, I'm doing a single pre-recorded session for each section of 1123, Business 1123. And the simple reason is my schedule of meeting. So I'm right in the middle of our time. So I've got to make do for that. So I thought, well, all right, this is the virtual part anyway, and I'll go ahead and make a recording for you. And this is for both Business 1123A and Business 1123B. And this is week 6, and we have 2 class sessions this week. This one is a pre-recorded session for Tuesday the 12th, and then Thursday the 14th will be our ground-based. And we've already done XLS 11 and XLS 10. So we're working on XLS 11. And some of the things we're going to work through, a 2-input data table for sensitivity analysis and capital budgeting, time value money, financial functions, and formulas. So that's the kind of typical business problems we're working with. And we're going to work with Morgan Wagner Machinery on a capital budgeting exercise. Okay. Now, beyond that, at this point, as I said, we're working ahead. So these XLS 8, the Excel case number 8, you should upload it here. Then XLS 9, and I've got those ready for you as far as the workshops, and we've covered them. So that being said, we'll do one other little piece of housekeeping. Now next week will be spring break, so there's no classes and no assignments due. And then we'll pick back up on week number 8, which will be the 26th and 28th. Well, we're going to talk about Morgan Wagner Machinery first. And as I mentioned, it's over in the files section of Canvas. Oh, I'm going to go into the files. And we're going to find a file called XLS 11 done. And here it is. And we're going to open that file. All right. And we're going to download it to your desktop so that when it comes time when it's due, you've got it. In fact, after I'm through this pre-recording, if you watch the recording, you ought to upload the thing then. All right, I'm going to show this in my folders. I always do with my browser. And we'll close this down, and I'm going to take it over here. And just to make sure that I don't have any issues, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. I'm going to enable editing, and I'm going to save it on my PC, on my desktop. And again, make sure it's on my desktop. And I'm going to put XLS 11 done. Okay. We'll save that there. Now, let's go ahead and talk about this case. As I mentioned to you, I use these cases these are old cases I've been working with or on for years, tweaking them a little bit here and there. Then, of course, you have the other cases that are listed here in the resource file. Let me go ahead and open it up. And you can see it's the NPV file in the practice files in Chapter 8 and the companion Chapter 8 files. Then the XNPV, and then the mortgage, and that uses a data table, and we'll see that today. Okay? All righty. We're going to start with this, and of course, as usual, we've got the spreadsheeting area up here. We've got the the purpose or the goal of this workbook, excuse me. And then we have the author, the file name, etc. Then we come to the assumptions area, as usual, and notice we have an interest rate. Then we have a thing called salvage value, and then annual additional income from the investment. When we evaluate a capital project, here's how we do it. The first thing is we figure out what are the relevant cash flows, and that is cash inflows and outflows, which leaves us with a projected net cash flow. Then we say, okay, in this project, how many years will it be? And that gives us a sense of the number of periods that we're going to be working through a case, the number of periods in which we're going to be analyzing the money using NPV. We want to know if we're going to receive $3 million over a 20-year period, what is it worth today? Now, one of the ways we do that is we use what we do discounting, and that is we use a interest rate that calculates out the time value of money. And we've talked about this before, and what we do is we basically say, if this company can make, and I'll show right here on the interest rate, this interest rate also, by the way, you may hear people call it the capital hurdle. You may hear them call it the discount rate. We're talking about NPV or XNPV. We're talking about what is a dollar in tomorrow's money worth today. If it's a lump sum, that's one interest rate, and it's handled one way. If it's an annuity, that is, I pay a fixed amount of money over a period of years at a fixed rate of interest, then look back, what is it worth? So if I'm going to get $10 million a year for 5 years, okay, I want to know the present value of that money. In other words, what is it worth in today's dollars? So we also have this equipment, and I think this is some kind of computer equipment they were going to buy, and they have a salvage value. That means that when we've used up that equipment, or we're through with a project and we don't know it, we're going to sell it. We might sell it to somebody to use. We might sell it for scrap, but we want to know what's the salvage value, especially if we believe all we'll do with it is be able to sell it for scrap. Then we have the annual additional income for investment. Okay. Now here's the whole logic. If by investing these monies, okay, our company is going to, if by investing the money, we can't get a return that's equal to or better than the rate of return or interest we could earn, or the rate of return or the return on investment that we could get with the same level of interest, we just don't do it. In other words, if I'm going to do a capital budget and I'm going to spend, and I gave you some annuities back there, this time will be the pay. This is really the situation. If I do a capital project, this is where I buy or build something that's going to last more than a year. If I am going to put, say, I'm going to earn $50,000 a year at 6%, I want to say, okay, what's that money worth in today's value? And that's net present value. And if I can't make more investing the company's money in that project than I would of just taking it and putting it in the stock market, for example, I might as well put it in the stock market. Okay? This is how we evaluate capital projects. So let's look at this. We come down here now, we have the assumptions area, and here is a fairly simplistic pro forma for a capital budget. Now, the word pro forma, P-R-O, space F-O-R-M-A, is an Italian word. it means for the sake of. A pro forma is a tool. It's a way we build a mathematical model of financial transactions so that we can see what might be the possible outcomes. All right. And we're looking at the following periods. These folks, they're going to do their capital budget period is going to run from 2009 to 2014. All right. Now let's look at this for a minute. This is the annual income that they get from the investment. And they're going to buy some kind of equipment. I can't remember what it was. And you'll see that we assume it's an annuity, an even series of cash flows at what we assume to be a given interest or discount rate. And then at the last year of the project, we have $210,000. Remember, we're going to sell this, we're going to get the salvage value of this equipment. And so the last year of the project, we'll have an annual net cash flow of $340,000. Now, just to make this a little bit easier to understand, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my cursor and let's just go ahead and do a little formatting here. Let's put these in all borders. Okay. And I'm going to take my cursor and I'm going to start at cell A15. And I'm going to use a nice fill. Okay. Now up here in the assumptions area, I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm highlighting cell A8 to B11. And I'm going to make that a nice salmon color. And just to be consistent, well, I have a little bit of a border there, so I think we're okay. But below here, I'm going to put all borders. Okay? Now, we've talked about assumptions. We've talked about using the name manager as a way to pin down variables. Let's click on formulas and see if we have any names. Well, we don't have any names created. Okay? So we would want to do that. All right? So let's click on, I'm going to click on cell B10 and I'm going to click define a name. And it's going to tell me interest rate. We're good there. I'm going to define a name on the salvage value. And I'm going to do the same on the annual additional income. I'm doing this just for the assumptions areas. Now, we're going to work with what's called a data table. And sometimes the data table doesn't play nice if we use defined names. I'm going to go ahead and put it in there, put those in there in the event that we might want to use them. But for now, doing the data table, we're just going to do cell referencing. Let's look right here for a moment, okay? And everything in the workbook, everything in this worksheet has to be linked together using cell referencing for the thing to work like it should. And I'll show you down here in a minute what we get with the data table. Here we've got the annual income, and notice we have it equals $B, $12. In other words, boom, we've got that assumption. You'll see it stays all the way across. We assume that this is an annuity. That is a series of fixed payments. Then on 2014, we've got the salvage value. And we use the sum to get an annual net cash flow for each of those periods. Now, we're going to start to compute the net present value of the investment. All right. The first thing we're going to do is right here on cell B23, I'm going to put equals sum B21 to G21. Click on the formula bar and you're going to see basically it's just that annual net cash flow. That's the total cash flow for 6 years. Okay. Now, if I wanted to be a purist, I'd put a dollar sign in front of the 21, row 21, to make sure it's understood. We're staying on row 21. But I don't here. I'm a little bit lazy. Then I'm going to compute the present value. Now, here we're going to use the net present value formula. I'm going to show you here. And here it is, equal net present value, B10, B21, G12. As I spoke about the other day, we always want to use the formula functions. The function dialog box is what we call it, in order to kind of understand the function and to get some answers. What does this do? What does it mean? So let's look here. We've got the function arguments. The rate of interest is there in B10, and that's 10%. Then we have the values. It can go up to 254 payments. And here we have annual income from the investment. The annual net cash flow, the annual net cash flow, B21 to G21. And then we click OK, and we've got our result. Now let's look at this for a moment. Remember that when we talk about the present value of money, we say, if I'm going to receive a certain amount of money in the future, what is it worth in today's dollars? There are one of two ways that I can receive the money. I can either collect a lump sum, that is a whole amount after a certain period of time, or I can receive payments. That's all there is to it. One's called the annuity, the other's called the lump sum. All right. And so in this case, we see that over 6 years, the total cash flow is going to be $990,000. The present value of it is $684,723, which means that $990,000 at 10% is worth in today's dollars $684,000. Okay. Now, I don't think this is included up here anywhere, but we had a cost of the investment, and they had to buy some equipment or something. This is the sunk costs. You remember we did the Badger jams, the jelly. That entrepreneur is going to go in and sell jelly, and they had a sunk cost. They had to buy, they had to spend money for stoves and advertising, and so before they ever sold a jar of jelly. Okay, same story here. They're going to have to invest in the equipment, and that's $640,000. Then to get the net present value of the investment, okay, we simply take the present value less the cost of the investment, and that gives me this $44,723. So you say, Dr. Harmon, are you telling me basically that I spent $640,000 to make $44,000? Yep, you're right. Well, how do I know? Well, it's simple. We have a metric, it's called the profitability index. And the profitability index is where we divide, in this case it's the present value of the present value that we get from the project divide that by the cost of the investment. You say this seems like an accounting ratio, and we worked on those. Yes. And notice we take this out to 4 digits. So for every dollar we spend, we make 6.9 cents, or let's call it we make 7 cents. Is that a good return? Well, maybe and maybe not for the simple reason. Notice up here that our capital rate, the interest rate, or what we call the capital hurdle, is 10%. We could take the same money, if we could take the same money and earn 10% in the stock market versus spending and getting 7% on our investment internally, we'd be smart to defer on this project. Just say, oh, no can do. But as I've spoken with you before, okay, decision making is not a black and white proposition. It's not binary. It's not yes or no. It's shades of gray. As I've said before, things can go pretty much as you expect them to, or really well, or really badly. So we want to get an idea of how that might look. Okay? So we use what we call a data table, where we look at different conditions and see, given a certain condition, how do we go? How do we fare? How do we look? And here's the data table. Move this over for a minute. Put this up here where you can see everything. There you go. And notice this is a 2-variable data table. And we have different profitability indices versus varying interest rates and varying income amounts. Okay? This data table has to be constructed fairly well, but it uses the equal table function. Now, notice here on cell B33, I call this the hinge for the table. And notice that it equals B27. All right? And then notice here we have, okay, well, 7%, 7.5%, 8%. We say, okay, we're going to go all the way up to 13% using increments of 0.5%. Okay? Now, one of the things I've learned over the years in working with data tables is I use them. I don't put those into percent style. I put them into two places, 2 digits. Pardon me, 3 digits. So let's look at this for a moment. Now, I also have, these are various income rates, annual income. And just to check, I'm going to come down here to B37, and notice I have an income of $130,000. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to find 10% rate. Okay. Now I've been getting 130%, 130,000. I'm going to come here to 10%. And notice that 1.0699 equals the value that we have here for the profitability index. So we're just saying, okay, at a given interest rate and a given annual income, what does the profitability index look like? Okay. Now I'm going to click. I've clicked on that table. I've clicked on that cell, and notice we use the table function. Okay. And notice that we've got here, this equals B10 and B12. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on the function, insert function dialog box. Okay. And it's going to give us a little bit of a it's a little, the table function is a little bit persnickety. Okay. So we'll just escape from this. I'm going to come back down here and take a look at it. And it says equal table. Notice it's within these symbols, and it's like a function. Now, in order to really kind of get an understanding of this, we know I'm going to go ahead and take this and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to put it into one of my little stickies. So I'll create a new sticky. Well, I thought it was. That's all right. We're going to do. And rid of that. That was a little bit of a note I sent you guys. I'll put this in. Now, and remember, we have those symbols in front. Okay. Let's talk about this. This will escape this for just a minute. Okay. Let's go up here and take a look at the assumptions area. And we'll notice this says equal table B10, B12. B10 is the interest rate. It's also known as a row or a column input. B12 is a row or column input. Now I'm going to use the equal table and we're going to click on data. Okay. And then we'll come over here to the what if analysis and we're going to click data table. All right. And it's going to ask me, what is the row input table? Let's think about this for a minute. The row input, okay, for this. Okay. And move this guy around here. The row input is B10. The column input cell is B12. Okay. And then we would click OK. I'm going to cancel this. But just to make it easier for us to remember, we have the row and column. Okay. We'll do that again. We'll go back over to the scenario analysis. And I'll use the data table. And the row input table is B10. And the column is B12. Let's think about that for a moment. So let's go back down to our data table. Now, the row input B10. Now we'll go up here and we'll write down what we've got here. One's the interest. Yeah, I'll put let's put IE. Let's put in other words. Interest rate. annual income. Now we're going to go back down here, and I want to pop this back up because I want to think about it for just a minute. Look at this. Here's the formula equal table. We're using the table, a data table function out of the what if analysis in Excel. The row function is B10, the interest rate. Okay. And here we have the various interest rates in a row across the table. Okay. Then we have the annual income is in a column. And here's the column. This is like a multiplication table, basically. And your text talks about data tables. There are also, you can go out to like Easy Excel and you can learn about those. But notice here that this lets us look at various scenarios, okay? So if I'm going to draw 100, if I'm going to make 160,000 a year and the interest rate's 7%, I'll have a profitability index of 1.4103. In other words, I'll be making 41 cents on every dollar. Pretty good. Now, one of the things I said here as we talked about this, and we've talked about through every case, is how do I display the data so somebody can understand it or attach meaning to it and make a decision or draw a conclusion. That's why we go through all this and do this. And I want you to notice something. I used conditional formatting, okay? And I used red, yellow, green. Not green, red, yellow, but red, yellow, green. And notice something. The more annual income I make here, the higher the profitability index. The higher the interest rate I make, the lower the profitability index. As you can see, the very best profitability index I can make here is down here where I'm making $160,000 a year at 7% discount rate. The absolute worst is where I'm making I have a discount rate of 13%, and I'm earning only $130,000. So you can see we see as it goes from bad to good and then in between. And we can see our current rate. Okay. That is the 1.069. All right. And we've got the $130,000 a year. And 10%. Don't let that 1.069 fool you. It did me there for a second. Now, again, this lets us see the possible outcomes given the amount of money that we may get and a capital discount rate or interest rate. This is the profitability index. This is a capital budget. It helps us determine, is it worth it to buy the new piece of machinery? Now, when I look at this and I see that I'm right here, I'm in this caution zone. Notice, because it's in the yellow. And so I've got to be cautious about this because, well, I'm right in the middle on interest rate. I'm right in the middle on annual income. So it can kind of go either way. Now I could change, all I have to do is to put in new assumptions, and I'll get all new answers, and this will repopulate itself. But that's what we do with the capital budget. And so we've used the data table, we've used the NPV function, we've built a pro forma for a capital budget, we've used assumptions sections, we even used the name manager. I created a name manager, but I've found that trying to work with it on the data table can become problematic. And I use cell referencing to tie everything together. And so I'm going to spend $640,000 to make, I'm going to spend $640,000 today to get 684,723 over a 6-year period. And I'll wind up with a net profit for a net cash flows. Net present value of those cash flows is $44,723. So I use a profitability index. I use a ratio to scrub the data a little bit. And so I'm making 6.9 cents on the dollar, or basically about a 7% return, but we'll be picky. And I'm making 6.99%. $6.99 cents on every dollar. So in terms of judging this, I would say no, for a very simple reason. This interest rate of 10% represents what I could get if I took my money and put it in another project that's equally risky. You will want to look at this a few times. You'll probably want, I believe you should be able to, look at the transcript. And it's not terribly complicated what we've done here. Although the data table function can be a little bit daunting, okay? But let's go back here. And it was equal table, and we used the data table function, equal table, B10, B12. And B10 is our row, and B12 is our column figure. In other words, interest rates and annual income. As we go down here and look, it'll help us to see that as we look at the table. Notice the row is the interest rate. And here they are. And then the column is the annual income. Well, that is XLS 11 done. And this is over in the files section. And so this is, you could upload this for your XLS 11 case. So I'm going to close this, and I'll save what we've got here. This file, remember, is up there. Okay. Now, we're going to do two other files or work with two other cases. We have three. One is that we're going to use the NPV function. This is going to come from Chapter 8, Figure 1 in the practice files. So you're going to need to get the Excel companion file. Okay? And here it is. This is companion 1. And we're going to go to Chapter 8. And we're going to look at the practice files. And we'll get the NPV. And so I'm going to take this, throw it on my desktop. I'll put it back in here. I'm going to make a copy of it, copy it, and then paste it. And then I'll do the same thing with the XNPV because we're going to look at it as well. So I'll copy it and we'll paste it. And then we also had the mortgage file, that the data table for mortgage from Chapter 17. So we're going to go back into the companion text, that zip file, and we're going to open it up, and we're going to go down here to Chapter 17. And it's in the practice files. Yes, it's in the practice files. I'm going to copy it. And then paste it on a desktop. And here again, I'm going to want to open these up and save them to my desktop. I'm going to enable the editing. And I'm going to save it as, see, my desktop. NPV. And I'm going to put Harmon. Case 11. Okay. And then well, where'd you go to? Here's the NPV. Case 11. I'm going to wait till we're through with this. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. So we got the three files. So let's take a look at the textbook, okay? And we'll use our resources here. It's Chapter 8. So let's go up here and take a look in the book and go over to Chapter 8. And here they talk about evaluating investments. And the authors do a great job of walking you through the basics of capital budgeting. What is an NPV? How do I use the NPV function? All right. And here's Figure 8.1. I'm going to close this down for just a minute. And let's look at this. I'm going to open up the file called NPV. Now, Here we have some periods of time. Okay. And here are the cash flows from the first investment, and here's the total of the two of them. Here's the cash flow. Investment number 2. We have 2 investments we're looking at. And here's the sum. Here's the present value of the first investment. And notice what they're doing. They're using the present value. Okay, that's that 10,000 investment. And go over C5. So we take out that 10,000 we invest. Now, notice that we've got this formula. This formula, D5, okay, that D5 is the $24,000. That's our investment. And that's divided by 1 plus the interest rate. That's what R is. And the interest rate is there in cell C3. Okay. And then we use the exponent. And that's how we get the D4. And so we're just using the exponent. Now this is the formula way to do it. Okay. And so notice on the next year, we have a cash flow. All right, those are the investments. And we're at the present value of 1. And here we are. That's D5. That's the $24,000, and that's divided by 1 plus the interest rate. And the exponent handles the number of periods. In this case, it's 1 period. And then we're going to see the present value of investment 2. And here we've got this equals E5. Okay. E5 is what we get from the second period, and that is we lose $14,000. We have $14,000 negative outflow. And that's divided by 1 plus R, that is the interest rate, at the exponent of E4. In this case, the exponent is 2. So it'd be minus $14,000 divided by 1.02 over to the second power. The book gives you some pretty good verbiage as far as that go, explaining it. They show you the formula. Okay. The present value of those investments, the second set. And they come down here in this area and they give us the present value at the beginning of the year. And that's what we've got going on here. Let's click here. That equals C7. It's the present value in the investment plus the net present value of interest rate, and then D5, which is the investment in cash flow, D5 to E5. So it equals C7 plus the NPV. Now let's click on here. And we get the dialog box. Here's the rate. It's 0.02. The values are D5 through E5. And that's where we get the 10,277. I mean, probably the 277. Now, we've got that present value at the beginning of the year. We've got 1 plus R times C14. Here's the same for investment 2. And so we're looking at the present value at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, and the middle of the year. They're using the formulas here to do that, when you could use the, and here the R is 0.2. Oh, this time it's 0.02. I apologize. Understanding the formulas is good. If you're a finance or accounting major, you should be prepared to use this formula. And to put this in English, the investment 1, the NPV for investment 1 equals minus $10,000. That was the initial investment, plus the present value of the cash received in year 1 or period 1, plus the cash received in year 2, and we come up with 277. Then we say for investment 2, in English, this is what it's saying. It's minus 6,000. That's that initial investment, plus 8,000 divided by 1.20. And they're using the 0.20 here, 20% hurdle rate. And we end up with a minus 2778. Okay? So they did a pretty good job of walking us through this. You could, if you wanted, upload this. I'm of the school of thought that says use the function, avoid the formula. You're human and you'll probably mistake. And if you think you can do this when you're dealing with a project that's 30 years or 30 periods, you'll go nuts. Okay? So that's the NPV. Now we're going to look at another function, and that's the XNPV. Okay? And that we're going to find over here in the figure 8.2. Now, XNPV assumes uneven cash flows. All right? So we're going to open up the XNPV file. We're going to take a look at it. Here it is. There's our friend XNPV. And we're going to open it up. And I'll enable the editing. And away we go. Now, they give us the information, the scenario behind this. And notice what we have. We have some kind of code. And that equals D3. This, what they've done here, in order to use the XMPV, you have to enter dates. Okay? And that's what those codes are. Notice. Okay. And they're using the cell referencing to say, hey, here's the code, here's the date in human terms. They've got them in order. Our interest rate or capital hurdle rate here is 10%. And we want to compute the XNPV. We're going to use it because the cash flows are uneven. When we did the NPV, we assumed an annuity formula. That is a set interest rate for a set amount of time, a fixed amount of money. And here we don't have that. And we're assuming a fixed rate of interest, but we've got uneven cash flows. And let's look at that. We'll click on the figure there. Now let's look at the dialog box. The rate is A11, that's 10%. Then we have the values, E3 to 93. And then we have the dates. This is a series of cash flows that correspond to a schedule of payments in dates. Scheduled payment dates that correspond to the cash flows. The reason XNPV is more typically used because in a real project out in the real world, you can't expect to have even cash flows. It just doesn't work like that. Now, if you're doing an annuity, say from a financial product, and let's say you're a bond holder, okay, and you've borrowed money using a bond. You have a principal you have to pay every year, and you typically will have an interest rate, and that interest rate's fixed as is the payment. But out in the world where we're maybe building a project, building a building, or we're retooling our machinery, or we're looking at an advertising campaign and how much we think we could be able to spend per year, the XNPV is the better product because it does not assume. Now, we also know this, that that point where XNPV and NPV meet is at zero, at break even of sorts. Now, the textbook will give you more narrative about the XNPV and a little bit of a case scenario to look at. So this file also could be used for your XLS11. So I started with a typical capital budget, and we used the NPV. We computed the present value of the money and got the net present value. Then we used a data table from the scenario. We used a data table to look at what would our profitability index be if we had a certain level of annual income or cash flow at a certain level of interest rate, or assuming a certain level of interest rate. And we use some conditional formatting to demonstrate that. Well, that's pretty much it. And again, this will be a broadcast for Section A and Section B. And I did take us over to Chapter 17. Let me look at this for a minute. What we were going to look at. Oh, okay. Oh, I forgot one. Mortgaged. I apologize. We didn't do that. Let's look at it. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We can look at the mortgage. No, I don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and look at this case. It's over in Chapter 17. It's in the practice files. Here it is. Let's open this up. Okay. This is another data table. Okay. And this is just simply doing mortgage computations. Here's the amount I'm going to borrow, $400,000. I'm going to borrow the money for 180 months. That's 15 years. The annual interest rate is 6%, and monthly payment is $33.75.43. So where in the world did I get that? Well, let's look at this. I'll click on the function bar. Okay. Using the payment function, yes, I can figure how much my payment would be given how much I borrow, for how long, at what interest rate, and how I amortize the data, that is, how often I pay it. The interest rate in this case is an annual interest rate the annual interest rate is 6%, okay? But apparently, I'm wanting to get, well, I have to break it, I have to divide that by 12 to get the monthly interest rate. So the annual rate is 6%, then it's divided by 12 to get a monthly rate. Then I have the number of periods. That's the number of months that I'm going to borrow it. Okay, so I start right up here with the rate. It's the annual interest rate for the period divided by 12. Now you say, okay, well, Dr. Harmon, if it's 6% divided by 12, that's where I get that 0.005. Could I do this on a weekly basis? Sure. Could I see what it looks like on a quarterly basis? Of course. If it's going to be monthly, you divide it by 12. If it's going to be by every week, you divide it by 52. If it's going to be every quarter, you divide it by 4. Pardon me. Yeah, you divide by 4. If you make semi-annual payments, that is twice a year, you divide by 2. Then we have the number of periods. And this is pretty simple. If I'm borrowing the money for 15 months, 15 years, I make monthly payments, then I take 15 times 12, that gives me 180. If I have a 30-year mortgage, okay, 30-year mortgage, and I'm going to make monthly payments, then I'm looking at 360 monthly payments. Now, the truth is, it's the rare person or family who will stay in the same house for 30 years. It used to happen when my grandparents bought a house, but not anymore. People are too mobile. People buy houses, and then the market looks good. They think they can get some additional, they invest in their home if they can get a return. So they basically, in some ways, kind of flip their home and they go buy something bigger, etc. Okay. You can use this to compute credit cards. And if credit cards, for example, let's say if a credit card is charging you daily interest and your annual rent and your annual payment is 12%, then it's going to be 12% divided by what? 365. Okay? Now we have the data table. And notice we have our hinge. We've got a monthly payment. And here we use the data table function. All right. I think I have my same sticky around here. Take that jewel up. And here it is for the table. It's the row, then the column. In this case, and I have to check myself because I can get confused between the column and the row. What I should assume is this is just like, the row is first, then the column. It's just the exact opposite of an XY chart. Here's a YX chart. I'll get the row versus column, row, then the column. In other words, the row is going to be the annual interest rate. And that's B10. Okay. And we'll go and verify. The interest rate is the row, and the column in this count is the amount borrowed. And D4 is the interest rate. In this case, it's D4, which is the column. That's the interest rate. And the row. And then in this case, it's the D4 is going to be the annual interest rate. D2 is the amount borrowed. And we use the data table. And remember, it's part of the scenario tools. And so we can literally say, okay, what will our payments look like if we borrow $300,000 at 5% interest? And it walks through increments of 0.5%. And that shows you. Just to make sure that we're right, what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we're going to start at 400,000 borrowed. All right. And then I'm going to come over to the 6% annual interest rate. And there's our payments, they match. So we're in good shape. Now, again, if I want, I can use the conditional formatting to give me a sense of this if I want to visualize it. And I'll do the conditional formatting. This will let us start fresh on Thursday. I mean, I need to like cover these, highlight them, I mean. Okay. Look at this for a minute. Notice we get that up here. The higher the interest rate, the more money we borrow, the higher our payment. Okay. Now these folks are assuming they're going to pay their house off in 15 years. Okay. Or whatever they've bought. Let's say it's a house. You can read in the case in the book to see. But instead of 180 months, let's say they take out a full 30-year loan. Let's look at this now and see what happens. Now, you can see it's pretty much the same. The less we borrow, even at a higher interest rate, the better off we are. Okay. You could look at the amount borrowed for a car. You could look at the amount borrowed on a credit card. You could look at the amount borrowed on a house. Whatever you would choose. Okay. That will do it for us for sure. All right. And I'm going to save the. And I'll have to put this on my desktop. And we're good. Okay, folks. That'll do it. And I'll stop the share and I'll see everybody on Thursday.